advocate on this. We met last week and walked Soapstone Valley Park with DC Water and with their contractor from a company called Hazen and Sawyer. And I don't think I'm really in a position to share too much information about that meeting because I don't have it confirmed in writing yet. But in short, I think they are. I think they've heard a lot of community outcry, and people are extremely concerned about the loss of trees, about the erosion, about many issues related to Soapstone. And I think they're hearing that message. But as a commissioner within whose district almost all of Soapstone lies, I think it's appropriate for us to create a committee consisting of community members who would continue to get to the bottom of the facts, really understand what it is they're planning to do, figure out ways to coordinate among all the agencies, National Park Service, the Department of the Environment, nonprofits like the Rock Creek Conservancy, and even BF Saul. BF Saul is getting ready to take down 4455 Connecticut Avenue, and if the timing is right, we might be able to access the western part of Soapstone from that property and take out even fewer trees. I don't know if the timing will work, but this is why we need a committee to study these issues, to really make sure that everyone in the community is advised and invited to participate as they're interested and able, and to just make sure that there are open lines of communication among all concerned. So with that background, I'd like to introduce my motion.
Sure.
So I, pursuant to ANC 3F bylaws, Article 7, Section 1B, I move for the creation of an ad hoc Soapstone Committee. The purpose of the Soapstone Committee shall be to research and establish facts relating to DC Water's sewer rehabilitation project in Soapstone Valley Park, coordinate with all relevant agencies, nonprofits in the community to minimize tree loss and maximize erosion control to preserve the natural beauty of the Soapstone Forest and Creek, communicate and engage with the community. Where possible, maintain access by the community to Soapstone during the work. Where appropriate, confer with experts to explore alternatives. Work with BF Saul, the National Park Service, DC Water, and others to take advantage of Connecticut Avenue access to the western part of Soapstone during the time that the building at 4455 Connecticut Avenue is down to further minimize destruction of trees. Where appropriate, work with Archibald Glover community, which is also part of the DC Water Sewer Rehabilitation Plan. The Soapstone Committee shall be in existence for the time period appropriate to address these concerns. That's all.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion from the public? If you do, can you come up to the microphone, David?
Mr. Chairman, I want to request a technical amendment to Commissioner Ray's excellent motion. At one point, sort of in the middle, first 40%, she refers to the sewers in Soapstone Valley Park. And I want to urge you to take out the word park, because as Marlene Berlin has pointed out in the Forest Hill connection, there is a whole chunk of this valley which is not part of the National Park Service park, and in fact belongs to the District Department of Transportation, and a large part of the DC Water sewer, old sewers that they're talking about, is actually on DDOT land and not National Park Service land. So at the right place, I just would like her and the seconder to agree to take the word park out so this ad hoc committee can deal with the entirety of Soapstone Valley, whether it's part of the park or not. The park, in fact, turns out to be not one piece of property, but 5 different pieces of property, with which at least 2 of them are separated by DDOT land, and I don't fully understand what the others are separated by. Thank you.
I'm going to accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Happy to change that.
Okay. Is anyone else? Tom, could you come to the microphone?
This is Tom Whitley, and I'm commenting on this subject because of great concern. My apartment building is at 4600 on the west side of Connecticut Avenue at Brandywine. And while there's no way to see what's going on down there underground, the water is flowing some distance up towards Reno, and all the way across our property and across Connecticut Avenue and down across Brandywine and through the lower level of the property on the east side of Connecticut Avenue till it gets to Albemarle Street. So that the overall concern that we have and would have and want to have is that what we decide to do about all that water is takes into account the potential damage to the properties that are affected by it. And I'm particularly concerned that the building that may very well get torn down or parts of it torn down has a wall, east side wall that goes way down and retains the earth in that area. And there could be some other harms and troubles about getting the right solution for the sanitary sewer, the potable water sewer, gray water, and the solution to the problem. So what I'm simply trying to do is introduce a few more elements, not so much confusion, but to understand that this is a long-term project and requires a great deal of care. And I think there are a lot of us that are affected by it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have comments at all? Okay. Let's vote on this then. All in favor of forming this committee? Raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And I guess the committee's going to do, so Mr. Fox was asking about like outreach. So the committee's going to go, is there a plan or anything?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
the committee
Cool.
has only existed for
Okay.
20 seconds. So.
Fair enough. But it'll do outreach and
Yes.
reach out to all the different apartment buildings that
Definitely.
along the park. All right, next up is a resolution to support renaming the UDC amphitheater after Chuck Brown. So I will turn it over to Mr. Summersgill, Commissioner Summersgill.
As many of you know, Chuck Brown was known as the godfather of go-go, a music style that is native to DC. He died about a year ago, and the mayor and the council at that point looked forward to creating a park with an amphitheater. They did rename the park, and they did a groundbreaking last week, but they were unable to get an amphitheater there, largely because the park was inappropriate. There was a lot of houses right around the park, so it would have created a lot of noise and traffic issues for the people that lived right there. However, UDC's amphitheater is not named, and I think this would be a great opportunity to rename the UDC amphitheater after Chuck Brown. The resolution asked the trustees of the university to rename the amphitheater and for the mayor and the council to allocate money to refurbish the amphitheater, taking money from that would have been used to build one in the park. This should help UDC in getting a little publicity, revitalizing the art scene, and hopefully getting a little bit of money. It will also help the mayor and the council live up to their promise of creating a Chuck Brown amphitheater and honoring him in that way. I passed around copies of the resolution. It says essentially that any second or?
So you're making the motion?
I'm making a motion that we pass this resolution.
Okay, I'll second that. Is there discussion from any commissioners?
Have we talked to UDC to find out?
This is asking us to talk to the UDC.
Oh, okay, so we haven't actually.
We have not.
So,
I see there are people from UDC here. Maybe they would like to share their insight or tell
Well,
us
can we
some things.
finish the commissioner
Sure,
discussion first?
sure. Okay, so we'll finish the commissioner announcements first.
Questions, yeah.
Questions, yeah.
Are you finished?
ahead.
Well,
Okay.
Emily.
I think this is a fine idea. I think Chuck Brown was deserving of recognition. And I think this is a fine idea as a way of potentially doing that. That said, I do have concerns about this resolution at this time, primarily for the point that was just raised about consultations with UDC. My understanding that UDC has a process that's pending or maybe in development in terms of naming different aspects of the campus, and I think we may have a better chance of success in terms of actually seeing this come to fruition as opposed to it just being offered and potentially received as a recommendation from UDC if it's done in cooperation with UDC. So I actually have a subsidiary motion. Later in the week, there will be a meeting with UDC representatives regarding compliance with the zoning order and potentially other issues that may be of concern. So I have a subsidiary motion to refer this resolution to the Education Committee that will be participating in that discussion, and the person will be I'll be representing the Education Committee, and at that time we'll raise it with them and potentially come back with a reproposal of Commissioner Summerskill's fine resolution for consideration after we've had a chance to have that interaction and engagement with UDC.
What you're suggesting is that we don't take a position until we get an okay from UDC, in which case our resolution is meaningless. So I take this as not a friendly amendment.
It's actually not a friendly amendment. It
No,
is
it
a
wasn't.
subsidiary motion. So I'm making a motion to refer this for future consideration after it's been considered by the Education Committee.
Yeah. So is there a second to Manoli's motion? Seeing none, it does not become a motion. So back to the original motion that Bob proposed to ask UDC to consider this. Is there any other commissioner discussion? Okay, seeing none. So there are people from UDC here. Be curious to hear their thoughts about a possible request from us. So feel free to come on up to the mic and introduce yourself. That goes on the internet. You don't actually hear anything.
Oh, okay, very good.
It's weird.
I'm Michael Rogers, Vice President for University Advancement at the University of the District of Columbia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. Let me speak to this resolution. I think it's, the sentiments are very appropriate. Certainly, Chuck Brown is an icon in this city's history, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who would support this amendment. Let me say that the responsibility for naming buildings on the campus of the university rests with the Board of Trustees. There are a number of unnamed buildings, on the campus. There are numbers, and that has been the case, since the founding of the university. We are now looking at the opportunities that providing naming rights would bring to the university. Advancement is one of my responsibilities. So my basic philosophy, at least I would recommend to the board, is that there are, several reasons that one would name a building. One is for a price consistent with the policy of the university that would be dedicated to a new building or renovation of an existing building, or a legacy. But the board has not opined on those policies yet. We expect that to come in the next several months. And I don't have a substantive position on whether the amphitheater should be named after Chuck Brown or anybody else. It's more of a process issue, and we would be very pleased to work with the commission and providing information, your recommendations, to the board as they consider what to do about the policies that they will have before them. Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
I was just going to say, so Mr. Rogers, is it your thought that this resolution is premature, given the fact that you all are in discussion about how to implement naming procedures?
Well, procedurally, yes. I would say that. I think that the university board of trustees is going to have an opportunity to discuss the whole parameter of naming rights and the implications and what that means. And I think that a resolution recommending a specific name would be more appropriate at that time. Thank you.
This, to answer you, this resolution asks the ANC to ask the trustees to rename the amphitheater. They may say no, but at least we're on the record of saying we think this is a good idea. But if we don't pass the resolution, then we have no position on naming anything after Chuck Brown.
Okay.
So I'm basically asking asking the commission to start the process. And if they say no, and if it takes them 6 months, it takes them 6 months. If they say yes, great. If they say no, we're no worse off than we are now. And it costs us nothing. David?
Well, Manoli, do you have a comment? No? Okay, David?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I think this is an ingenious resolution for which everybody should be grateful, including UDC, but I'm not sure that this is the night you ought to be voting on it, in this special meeting as compared with your regular meeting, after what I think should happen, which is a broader consideration of context, okay? Why do I say it's ingenious? Because it's linked, one question, a recognition of Chuck Brown, two, with the fact, apparently, that I wasn't aware of until Commissioner Summerskill brought it to our attention, that there has been this proposals for an amphitheater elsewhere, and funding and political elected official commitments which haven't been carried out and they're stymied, right? And the fact that we have several facilities at UDC which are not named, and an amphitheater, which I've heard in other contexts too, having to do with holding this this expo that you've probably heard about from former Commissioner Whitley before I came here, that this amphitheater needs fixing. So there's a lot in this resolution I think is very useful and interesting. On the other hand, and the context I want you to think about is this: UDC is the largest enterprise in our neighborhood, the largest landowner, the largest employer, a very big factor. You, in February, created a Van Ness Vision Committee, which has progressed in a number of areas, including a whole question about revitalizing the commercial strip of from the railroad, from the metro station to Albemarle, thereabouts. I think you want to engage UDC and engage UDC heavily and forcefully. And I've had conversations with Vice President Rogers, who's a man whom I admire as one of the great leaders in Washington, D.C., and a very fortunate, relatively new acquisition to the team at UDC. I talked to him about what you could do, what other businesses in this could do, what UDC could do to forge an engagement. What I'd like you to do, I didn't know about this education meeting that Commissioner Manolis mentions, and I think I'd like to attend. Maybe I'd like to attend it if Mr. Redmond would invite me. But I'd like you just to pause. You've put something very interesting on the table. Start an intensive discussion, and after that, you may want to have a resolution which says we recommend to the trustees this naming. You may want to have another resolution which says we recommend to the mayor and the DC council that you provide funds for the amphitheater, whatever it's named. I mean, it's conceivable. There's other. I don't understand the relationship of these fundings to the naming. There may be other places to name for Mr. Brown, but I'm suggesting to you just put this off. That you not vote some substitute now. You not look for the friendly amendment, but put it off and engage in the next few weeks between now and your regular meeting in September in some attempt to see how you're going to work as an ANC and other parts of the businesses and residents in this community with UDC. That's my recommendation to you.
Thanks. Is there any other comments from the audience? Is there any other further, Commissioner?
I'd like to again propose my subsidiary motion to refer to the committee for future consideration.
Probably out of order, but is there a second?
Okay, I'll move to table the resolution then.
Is there a second to table the resolution?
Wait, to table Bob's resolution?
Bob's, yes. Seeing none, is there any other further discussion on this from the commissioners?
I wonder, I don't know, can I just ask you, put some thoughts out there. Would you consider a friendly amendment? Therefore, be it resolved for the reasons above that ANC 3F requests the UDC Board of Trustees consider naming the amphitheater for Chuck Brown. I mean,
How is that different?
because I think this sounds like we're trying to tell them what to do.
We are
And-
requesting that they rename it. If you're requesting that they consider it, I think that weakens it for no particular reason.
And I guess I don't feel comfortable
Requesting something from UDC?
requesting that UDC name their amphitheater. I think that should be their choice.
That's what we're asking them to do, make a decision. If they say no, they say no. If they rename it later because someone gives them money, more power to them.
Okay, well, I think I will second Manoli's motion to table the motion. Does that make sense?
Sure. So all in favor of tabling the motion, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, abstain, none. All right, so back to the motion. The motion to table did not pass. So we're back. Is there any further commissioner discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll put this to a vote. All in favor of this resolution, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? One. And all abstaining? One. So the motion passes, I believe, yes. So Bob, you can figure out whatever timing you want to do whatever, send a letter, go to a meeting. Thanks. Okay, so next item on the agenda is Manoli had updates on the 9/11 responses.
So in our June meeting, we voted to send a set of questions to the Office of Unified Communications as a result of concerns raised by residents of 3F05 regarding ending up on hold for up to 10 minutes while trying to make a 911 called to report a concern about a fire. We submitted the questions and we got the answers on July 24th. I think it's fairly charitable to say that the quality of the responses was uneven. I was actually in contact with Jennifer Green, the director of the Office of Unified Communications, and was invited to visit, the entire commission was invited to visit the office. I did do that visit last week, and it was interesting, and I do plan to, and learned a fair amount about the operations and got some clarification on some of the responses, and had, but it also raised some additional questions. So at this time, I would like I think it's effective to have a vote to follow up on the responses we received and additional ones that came about from the visit. But I don't have those questions drafted. The visit happened just at the end of last week. So I'd be looking for is, I don't know if this is in the form of a resolution, a motion, but looking for support of the commission to follow up with further questions, and I'll submit those questions to the commission before sending them. And this is in the goal is to eventually draft a report or consider following up with additional actions that the commission is entitled to take.
Okay.
Do we need a motion or a vote to ask questions that we don't have before us? I mean, I think you can just ask questions.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you can ask questions. I mean, if you want, you can prepare for our next meeting, and we.
I'd like to be able to, just in the interest of time, have them send them before the next meeting is.
Okay. I mean, I don't.
So procedurally, I'm not sure what the. We did vote to send the last letter.
I guess let's make it just a motion to give you the authority to ask on behalf of ANC 3F follow-up questions to the prior letter, and whatever you think is appropriate. That's fine with me. Is there a second on my motion?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on my motion? Seeing,
I'm again just going to say I think it's unnecessary.
I think it probably is, but we'll
Okay.
just do it anyway.
I'm happy to withdraw and just
Nah,
send the
we'll
letter.
just-
I think
vote.
you have enough authority to do it without.
We'll vote on it anyway. All in favor, say aye. Thanks, unanimously voted. Approved. All right, so now, is there any other items on the 911 besides that? Okay. Next agenda item is the second reading of the bylaws amendments regarding the grants. Does someone have those proposed amendments?
I do.
Okay.
I do. So this will be the second reading. The original text reads, this is Article 10, Section 4D. Grants should be awarded on a one-time basis for specific community projects. Funds should be used on projects benefiting a substantial part of the ANC 3F community or a segment of the residents with clearly identified needs. The request could, however, come from a broader-based organization so long as it serves the ANC 3F community. So the proposed bylaw amendment strikes the first sentence. The grant should be awarded on a one-time basis for specific community projects. It strikes that sentence to now read, funds should be used on projects benefiting a substantial part of the ANC 3F community or a segment of the residents with clearly identified needs. The request could, however, come from a broader-based organization so long as it serves the ANC 3F community. There's also additional proposed new text, which would be Article 10, Section 4H. The Commission may vote to waive any element of the guidelines for specific projects, provided the waiver does not conflict with federal or D.C. law or directions from the D.C. Auditor or Attorney General.
Okay, thank you. I believe we would vote on it next meeting. Is that?
No, we
Or
voted
do we
on last
vote it?
meeting, so we could vote on it.
Oh, so we voted on it a second time?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the second reading.
Okay, so the motions to approve this.
So I have a motion to adopt the amendment to the bylaws for Article 10, Section 4D, to include a new section 4H.
Okay, I'll second that. So is there any discussion on these bylaw amendments that we've heard for a second time?
I just want to recognize Commissioner Summersgill for assistance on both this and the grant guidelines.
I don't think I really did
Got some input, so. And Commissioner Perry, who's not here today.
All right, all in favor of the bylaws amendments, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next item, Bob, Commissioner Summersgill, do you have a financial update?
We currently have $134,822.71 available. You need that again?
$134,822.71.
$134,822.71. Yes.
Great, thank you. Next up, approval of the minutes from the July meeting. This is the formal meeting, not the special meeting in late July. So those meeting minutes of July meeting were circulated by Secretary Lowell. Does anyone have any comments or questions about those minutes? Seeing none, can we vote on those minutes? All in favor of the July 2013 meeting minutes, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Last item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the July 26th special meeting. Does anyone have any comments or edits to those? Seeing none, all in favor of those minutes, raise your hand and say aye. We have 4 in favor, all opposed, abstaining, 1 abstention. Passes. So those July 26th special meeting minutes are approved. That concludes our meeting. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
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 Pass unanimously. Good night.